So stop sharing and then share the new one.
So we're going to be talking about the Brace 2 project for real-time structural health monitoring. The premise of this project is that there are 5 bridges that are outfitted, or there's several bridges that are outfitted throughout the state of California with accelerometers. And we are looking at 5 in particular, and we want to answer, when an event happens, what can we say about where resources should go? How do we make safe calls about where we send out responders or inspectors? So for these bridges, we are just using historical data that has been collected. The oldest we have is the Meadowland Bridge, which is a classic structure, has been through several large ground motions and has been looked over several times in the literature. And then there's the top left, the Hayward Bridge, which we're receiving real-time data from. So every time there's an earthquake that exceeds some tolerance of the magnitude of excitation, that motion gets sent to us. And we want to put together some report to make the best possible decision, or allow someone to make the best possible decision about where resources need to be. And this is a very difficult question. There's a lot that comes into this. It's a lot more than just building a high fidelity structural analysis and running the ground motion. So to kind of highlight really what we need to consider, we're just going to kind of build a picture of the expectation, what it looks like when an event happens. What are the questions we'll be facing, and what the decisions we need to make, the calls that we need to make. Then we'll walk through the implementation details that we've done, and then we'll finish off with a short demonstration of the platform that we put together for this purpose. Now, so to begin painting that picture, we found, like, as we've kind of been considering this, it generally helps to think about what happens when someone makes an assessment on a human's health. What happens at the doctor's office? How does someone diagnose something? So we're going to start just walking through a dentist visit. It might have a little bit to do with a dentist visit this Thursday that I'm kind of dreading. I need some people to share actually. But when someone walks into when you walk into your dentist appointment, a patient's going to be complaining about some aching, and you're kind of going to be directed to a particular molar with a particular number. An assistant's going to come out. They're going to take out a lead vest, some plastic pieces, just so they could scrape up the top of your mouth. I don't know why. And then a black box that's going to beep ominously. In the next stage, this assistant is going to, after using the tools that they laid out in front of you, they'll pull up some pictures of your teeth and show some dark spots, make you kind of scared. And then an expert, a dentist, maybe Dr. Masalam, not to be confused with Professor Masalam, but his wife's dentist, might look over the damage and put together some kind of report to tell the insurance company how much money they're expected to cough up. So the way that this would translate in our situation, in the structural health evaluation, this patient is a station, it's a bridge. And we're going to receive some notification that they're shaking, and we're going to be directed at a particular channel on this structure. And at this point, we need to lay out the tools that we have, not just a high fidelity force-based beam model, structural analysis model that we can run a very computationally intensive model on, but we need to leverage every tool that we know about to make the best possible assessment of what is going on in every one of the bridges in the inventory, so we can properly allocate resources. So a lead vest, we might pull out some Kalman filter algorithm, identify some modes or frequencies, an OpenSeas model or two. We're finding that one might not be enough. There are things that don't vary continuously that we can't just nicely parameterize. Sometimes we need to deploy a structural analysis model with a particular damping coefficient because the excitation is just like is a particular way. And one damping parameter won't cover every possible excitation. And then black box that beeps ominously, we have AI models that we think that kind of characterizes well, so we won't change that. But then an assistant is going to kind of then paint a picture of some cross sections, maybe with yielding, and talk about some numbers that should change or should be higher or lower, maybe the fundamental frequencies that we identified. And all that's going to be put together for Caltrans to look at and put together a report. So in summary, we want to capture these ideas of some visit, an event that happens that we need to make a report of. There's a patient, a structure, which is identified by station. And then the different instruments we have, which we call predictors. These can be a structural analysis model, could be an AI model, or some system identification model. And then various health metrics that don't definitively tell you maybe whether damage has happened, but they can be an indicator for an expert to make a judgment call, particularly when they're looking in the context of a whole inventory of bridges. And then finally, we want to build an evaluation. So beginning with the implementation, a station should encapsulate all the predictors. It should know about all the possible predictors that it can deploy when an earthquake happens. And it won't necessarily deploy all of these predictors for every earthquake. It will have to employ some algorithm to judiciously decide which ones might be pertinent right now. Maybe if it's a low excitation motion, it would have to choose a model with a particular damping setup that is suited for that. It implements an evaluation operation, which will take this event, construct the evaluation, which will give us a report when given this event, and decide how it's going to populate that evaluation. Then we have in detail the predictor. This is anything, again, that can predict some kind of quantity about the structure, some kind of demand parameter or something. It's going to declare health metrics that it is capable of predicting. So a structural analysis model might be able to give you some prediction of what a peak drift might be, a peak acceleration at certain locations. Or if it's a high fidelity model, it might give you strain information from inelastic response at cross sections. But then the predictor might be a system identification routine. Then it can only give you a health metric that would be a period, maybe a mode shape or something. So the first thing that it needs is to be able to allow the station to queue it based on the health metrics it can provide. Then it has the new prediction operation just to generate or stage a prediction, run prediction, and then retrieve a metric from that prediction. And then finally, there's the evaluation. This is, like we mentioned, populated by some station managing object that will select predictors to deploy, and then populate this evaluation with the results of that predictor. So far, what we have in pseudocode, there might be the station, it might implement some method, which when receiving an event, it will create on line 4 an evaluation. It will assign metric predictors based on information about that event. It might take peak acceleration, certain spectral quantities, and it will rank the predictors that it has available based on what might be needed for that, to carry out an accurate evaluation. It will receive some collection of queued predictors, and at that point, save at least the base state of the evaluation, even though nothing is run yet. It'll at least save something that knows what it expects to have evaluated. And then it will then, in parallel, run through these different predictions in an order determined by their priority, execute the prediction and retrieve their metric data and populate the evaluation. And then further, we have some details on what the event data structure might look like. An event data structure would have to be something that can be equally understood by different prediction methods. So a structural analysis model has to understand it, and any type of structural analysis model. So not just traditional uniform excitation, but there should be something that we can also deploy a multiple support excitation model against. So this event will encapsulate information about the general event, and it will contain objects that we call motions at localized kind of points of the structure. And those motion objects contain components. So a single motion prescribes motion in space at a single location of the structure. And then its individual components prescribe the series data, which generally will have primarily acceleration, but then in our case, we have integrated velocity and displacement as well, which is being processed for us by CGS, who is sending us data. And that wraps up the outline of what the implementation would look like. And okay, so this is what we've implemented to carry this out. So this is a web application. What we're showing right now is just kind of a simple reference implementation. Really the core of, I think where our work has gone into is defining the interfaces for the different components that we just listed. And so we've defined them in terms of JSON schemas. So well-defined data interfaces between the different components. And this is a demonstration of a platform that shows how they work together. So it begins at the dashboard. This will show an overview of recent events that have been triggered. So every time one of the bridges in the inventory receives a motion, it is automatically sent to this platform, which is running on a server in the cloud. And it's received via an API that we designed. It receives this event object serialized as JSON, stores that in a database, and then deploys all the different predictors for the bridge that is relevant to that event. So these are an outline of recent ones. Here we have an overview of the inventory for decision makers to look over. And when we go to a particular evaluation, here we have a model of the structure, a digital twin in a way. And then we have different evaluations against this. So that would have returned from these different predictors. So at the bottom, these M1, M2, M3, these are different predictors or structural analysis models. Right now, we're just kind of running a lot. They're not entirely refined as much as we will. But these are different. So these are different assessments on what we could predict the state of this might be. Here we see on the left-hand side, the max damage state. This is a strain-based damage state assessment, which only higher fidelity models are capable of providing. And we have different evaluations for different models. And then most structural analysis models are able to give data on a peak displacement, which is here in the center. So they all have their feedback on that. And then a peak acceleration. These are quite low for the test motions we've been running. And then down here, we have data on period shifts. So these are identified periods based on some system identification methods that we've run. And the objective here is that we can build up a record of the health of this structure and begin analyzing trends in its periods and look for what is a meaningful change in these quantities, which can be extremely valuable for identifying when something considerable has happened to the structure. So one of these pages is constructed every time a motion is triggered at one of the bridges. Here we have the full database of all the evaluations that have happened. And then we have some other structures that we had been working with. So, but these we are just running primarily the system identification procedures on. That's the Mellowland Bridge. This is the Real Del Bridge. These are simple overpasses with system identification. And that's about it for the demonstration. Now, I guess in closing, some thank yous. This project has been generously funded by Caltrans. And we've had invaluable contributions from the UNR team helping us with higher fidelity soil models of some of the high fidelity structures. And then cooperation with CGS has been invaluable towards getting this real-time data stream that is happening so that we can automatically have these models and predictors deployed when an earthquake is triggered. And that's all. Thank you for your time.